podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, one of the world's leading international professional bodies, which is advancing coaching in business and society worldwide. I'm your host, Rosie Nice, executive coach, leadership development consultant, and founder of Magic Coaching. And in this new series, we'll be exploring how organisations can thrive and help their teams reach their full potential by creating a successful coaching culture. I'll be talking with leaders from a wide range of organisations, inviting them to share their personal, real-life experiences of embedding a coaching approach within their workplace, hearing their successes, the challenges they've faced, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Our aim is to offer practical insights and inspire you with the confidence to cultivate an environment where coaching becomes integral to organisational success, a culture of healthy, high performance. Hello and welcome to this episode in our series on focusing on building a successful coaching culture. Today's guest is Jo Richards from L'Oréal, one of the world's biggest names in beauty, where she is head of education at L'Oréal Dermatological Beauty. So hello, Jo. It's lovely to have you here as a guest on our podcast today. And thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Rosie. It's great to be here.
Lovely. I'm looking forward to our conversation. So in today's episode, we're going to hear how Jo played a pivotal role in championing a successful coaching culture as commercial excellence training manager within L'Oréal's professional products division over nearly a 5-year period. So Jo, can we start by asking you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yes, definitely. I've been in the beauty industry for 30 years. And yes, Rosie, I did start when I was 5. I'm a beauty therapist by trade, but I've always been super interested in beauty, in particular sort of skincare. So I started my career in commercial, so in the sales side. For 20 years, I had various roles with companies like Virgin, Dermatologica. And then 8 years ago, I moved across to my first ever education role, like a full education role, I mean. And that was with L'Oréal. So I started off, as you've said, with professional products division for 6 years. And this is where obviously I explored the world of hair care. So this was fantastic, a new challenge. And currently I've moved across and back into my roots of skincare, and I'm in L'Oréal Dermatological Beauty.
Lovely. Thank you. So you and I worked together over a number of years within L'Oréal as you focused on building your coaching culture. So let's begin at the beginning and tell us, how did it all start? What made you so passionate about coaching, and why did you decide to focus on a coaching culture?
I love that question, Rosie. I love developing people, to be honest with you. And I love when people are the best they can be at their particular role. And as a manager, I very quickly realised that people didn't respond very well to being told. So this is where my coaching came into play, which was in my commercial roles. But then when I moved across to education, I actually realised it was equally as important, and especially if you were trying to educate people on how to be the best they could be at, say, commercial excellence. So when I moved across into professional products and I had to educate a 120 strong field team, I realised my passion for coaching was absolutely immense.
You had this focus, this vision, this passion for coaching. What was the culture like when you first joined? Was it very different to that?
Yes, definitely. The culture when I first joined was very much a quick culture of maybe tell. And I realised very quickly that I wanted to almost move that culture across to being more of a coaching culture, so that everybody was a little bit more free thinking and a bit more proactive.
And it's interesting that you say you very quickly realised that as a manager, people don't respond to being told. Tell us a little bit more about that and that realisation, because that's very astute and that's obviously at the heart of the journey towards changing that and bringing in coaching.
Definitely. As I said, I realised early on in my career in sales that if you were almost telling people what to do, then there wasn't any of this free thinking, and almost then they couldn't operate out of those boundaries. So the minute you sort of move across to more of a coaching culture and you ask people to think about what they're doing and how they're going to do it, it, it changes everything, if I'm being honest. And especially, as I said, when I sort of came into this education role, I realized very quickly that my biggest vision was like, how do we move people across from being almost like, say, sales reps to being across to being business development managers? So I wanted that vision to be coaching. I knew it worked from my sales background. I wanted it to be more free thinking, more proactive. And the main aim of the vision was to move our strong field sales team of sales reps across to being business development managers. And this actually spearheaded us changing the name of our sales reps as well, which is another story. But naively, I think I thought that you could measure success when you're in education the same way as you did in commercial by the sales numbers. But actually, we needed to put a path and a program in place of how we trained people to understand the coaching culture first.
Yeah. And when we're in conversations with people around building a coaching culture, we often have the conversations exactly around that. So how do I measure the success? Sales is much more tangible in terms of the outcomes, the revenue, the cost of sale. So how did you go about that measuring process? What did that look like for you?
We did a skills audit to start with, to be honest with you. So we looked at 10 basic skills that we wanted our business development managers, as they were then changed their names, to have. And then almost like work through a program of what skills we wanted to work on. But I realized that a lot of these skills were soft skills. So it is quite hard to tangibly measure a soft skill in comparison, say, to a hard skill, which would be your sales performance. So having a really clear pathway of how I was going to work on all of these soft skills was where I started off. And I think when you've got a vision of that you're trying to move people across to being more interactive, more free thinking, more business development, then it's quite easy.
And the shift from calling people sales reps to calling them business development managers, did that symbolize a lot of the change in focus for you?
Yes, definitely. I think we framed it that we wanted them to be the CEO of their area so that they were empowered to think about what their actions were with their salons. So if you think about a salon manager, a salon owner, they also want to be coached. So this is where it was quite interesting because I need to think about how we coached or used a coaching culture internally, but then externally. How did I get those business managers to actually then coach their salon owners rather than tell them as well?
That's really interesting. It's a really good example of how a coaching culture can be internally focused in terms of the way that you manage and develop your teams and the way that the managers are with their people, the internal culture. But you're also talking about using those skills with the relationships that they're building with their clients. And in this scenario, we're talking about the salon owners and the salon managers. So they're using their skills in a very broad way, which is fascinating. Tell us a little bit more about that.
As you said, it's putting that path in place. And once you have those skills there, the skills are transferable, if I'm being honest. The skills I learned in my sales roles that then you move across to education, whether that's an internal skill of coaching, it's exactly the same externally. So like I think I've joked before, Rosie, you can actually learn how to coach your partner, your husband, your family as well. Not advisable, obviously. But rather than telling constantly, this is actually, dare I say it, a change in how you operate in life, not just at work.
And often it's around how do I show up? And we do hear people saying, my listening skills have improved. I'm more present. I ask more questions. And therefore it changes the quality of the relationships that you have. And it's that ripple effect of people bringing coaching into the way that they are and their being and their behavior.
Yeah, definitely.
You've talked about the vision that you had for the coaching culture you were creating. So let's talk about how you managed to put that in place. So tell us about the journey and how you went about building this coaching culture over this period of time.
The journey was absolutely great. It was a lot of hard work and I did find it challenging, if I'm being honest. For the first couple of years, I wanted to make sure that I got the fundamental sales structure in place before I started to look at how I could implement the coaching culture that I wanted. So I decided to start with the middle tier of sales managers, the regional managers in our 120 strong field team. I think this group of people were super strong and in high spirits to start with. But if I'm being honest, it probably was harder in everyday life to actually coach a team of people that are used to being told things than what we anticipated.
What was it about it that was difficult? Was it the managers shifting the way that they did things, or was it the sales team getting used to this new way of working? Where do you think the challenges came from?
I think it was a little bit of both, to be honest. I think the managers would role play and come into the training room and find it probably quite easy to do with each other. But then when they went out into the field and maybe their team member didn't respond as quickly as they wanted to, I think the default setting was then to come back to tell. Basically, coaching takes longer, especially when you're setting up the process, than probably telling somebody the instructions that they need to do. But then also, I feel that maybe the field sales team didn't fully understand this culture shift either. So we'd started off by training the regional managers, and really the sales team didn't understand that process.
Okay, yeah. And I think what you're saying, a lot of people listening will really be able to relate to what you're saying in terms of the theory is so fantastic. Everybody loves the idea of it. People go out full of passion. And in the reality of a fast-paced environment with targets to achieve, etc., it's difficult to bring that into practice. So how did you go about getting across that bridge and addressing that challenge that you've just described? Tell us more about what you did when you realised that that was a difficulty.
I think initially we started off by pulling all of the team off of the road and doing like upskilling sessions in the training room. I think when we started to look at how we could do more one-to-ones as well, this is where we saw quite an improvement on the coaching culture with maybe the regional managers. I think the other major shift that we had was that we started off by looking at a coaching module called Grow, and the feedback was that this was quite harsh because when you're using the Grow coaching technique, you start straight away with the goal. So the managers found this hard, and especially probably even the sales team found it harder. Then you'd be asking them, what's your goal? And they wouldn't know what their goal was. So when we actually introduced Magic, the coaching technique that you have invented, Rosie, that was for me a game changer, to be honest with you. And if I explain with Magic, it starts with the M and it starts with the mirror. So this part of coaching means that actually it's a lot softer. You actually can ask somebody to talk about themselves, like where are you currently at? And get them to look in the mirror and reflect and assess themselves. This was a lot softer. So for me, that was probably the game changer when we moved across to the Magic coaching module as well.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that. Thank you so much. That's great to hear that the idea of reflection and looking in the mirror worked within the training that you were offering, which is fantastic to hear. And I know that you broadened out the training that you offered people as well. So you offered people coaching training, but you've talked a lot about developing softer skills, behavioural skills. So what else did you do in terms of helping people upskill? You've talked a little bit. What other training and support did you put in place to help people?
I did a lot of one-to-one coaching sessions so that everybody could explore what their goals was, what they wanted to achieve, so that they could break that down into tangible goals and milestones as well. I think it's also really important to make sure that all of your senior stakeholders are on board. And probably in hindsight, I probably wish I'd have done that earlier than what I did, because I think having the senior stakeholders on board cheerleading you all the way is very motivational as well.
Yeah. So you're talking about, you trained the middle managers, you trained the teams, and now you're talking about getting senior management on board. And it's a 360 approach, isn't it, from your perspective? So how did you go about selling the benefits of your vision to the senior managers and those around you as well?
I think the senior managers were on board right from the beginning. You know, they loved the idea. I think what I wish I'd have probably have done earlier was actually explained the process in more detail than maybe what I did, so that they could understand actually this is the technique that we're going to use, so that then they could use that at the same time as the sales team.
Absolutely. And what you're describing is a change journey, isn't it? So you'll have great moments of progress, and then perhaps you'll feel like the progress is stalled. And sometimes you almost feel sometimes I'm going backwards in terms of people revert to their old ways of doing things. And we would love a journey to be fast paced and smooth. But what you're describing is keep the momentum going. And I know that what you did was ongoing training and more training and check-ins and reinforcing of the process. And how important did you think that was in embedding the coaching?
Oh, super important. I think it's just constantly being on with the culture, to be honest with you. It is everything that you do. It's then going to sales meetings and weaving this in. It can't just be a one-day training course that you pull everybody off the road and then it's implemented. It is everybody, like you said, it's a 360 approach using a coaching culture to make it come alive. As I mentioned, the other major bit, and then probably the game changer for us, was when we actually included the sales team in the training. So I didn't do that to start with. So when we decided to pull the whole sales team off the road and show them what the coaching module looked like and how we were going to operate, pardon the pun, but that's when the magic happened.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because I think we hear from lots of people that actually, if you are going to coach people, the teams need to know how to engage in coaching and they need to be understanding of, so what's expected of me? And when people ask me questions, they genuinely do want to hear what I've got to say. And I think sometimes there's a bit of a lack of understanding and a reticence of the teams because it's a change in the way that they're being managed. And people are sometimes a bit resistant to change, aren't they, before they get on board?
Definitely. As I said right at the beginning, it was quite challenging, but everybody had high spirits. Everybody wanted to give it a go. So I actually think that makes the difference, because if you've got a positive attitude, a positive mindset, you might not be the best coach to start with, but it is just something that you've got to practice in your environment. When I first started coaching, I used to practice on my husband. I think the more you can put it into your life and this becomes a way that you operate, the easier it is to implement at work.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it becomes part of the way that you lead and manage your team and part of the way we do things around here, which is a definition of culture that people often use.
Definitely.
Jo, one of the things that people often worry about, I think, is how do I give developmental feedback when I'm coaching? So how did you bring coaching into the way that you gave feedback and manage sales performance?
The goal is still the same, if I'm being honest, Rosie. So the goal is that you need to hit your sales targets. So nothing changes, just your approach and maybe how you operate is what changes. And as I said to you, when you're dealing with salon owners, this approach actually made quite a big difference because our business development managers were then a lot softer coaching our partners. So it was a win-win, to be honest with you. Just because you have changed your culture to be more coaching doesn't mean to say that you don't have sales targets and that you need to hit them. It's still exactly the same.
Yeah. And that's great to hear, because I think sometimes people think, but I've got a coaching culture. Can I still give developmental feedback? And I guess my response to that is actually, if you build trust and you build openness, it's almost easier to give feedback because you're giving feedback more regularly. And did you find that when people were coaching, that they were giving feedback more naturally as part of the way that they built relationships with people?
Definitely, 100%. And I think that's where it helps that I had a 20-year background in sales so that I understood the sales process. Still, our core outcome was that we needed to make sure that we had good performance, but equally, how you do it, the journey to get there was the bit that was changing. And I could definitely see a lot of our business development managers and our regional managers blossoming with their relationships with their business partners, i.e. the salon owners, because of this change as well.
That must have been great to see. So when you thought about the culture at the beginning of this process, and then I know that you then moved on to a different role, what would you say was the real differences? You've seen these blossoming. When you looked at the start and the finish, what do you look at and are you most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of the fact that we really did transition from sales reps across to business development managers, if I'm being honest. I also could see the development within teams, quite a few people then went on to get promoted. So I think this culture is more than just an everyday thing. It also then sets people up for their careers as well. I wish I'd have maybe done all of this when I was 20. It would have been fantastic. But then as I've moved across back into skincare, it's taking a lot of that with you into your next role. It's all them learns that you've then putting it into fruition.
Yeah. So you're now in a very different role, back into frontline management as opposed to a learning and development role. And how are you finding it using everything that you learned and in a very different role?
That's a great question. I absolutely loved going back to my roots of skincare. I enjoyed the hair care, but going back to skincare has been fantastic. But the main thing that I wanted to get back into was having a team of my own. So the role in the hair division was me training other people, whereas this role I have a team of 8. And the new challenge is that half of my team are based in the field and half of my team are based in head office. So even I'm having to learn how to flick my coaching culture, because it's very different doing remote management and trying to keep that coaching culture there compared to, say, what it's like when you actually have a team that are in the office with you. So that's my new challenge for sure.
And are there any things that you've learned that you would say, what if you're trying to pinpoint, what do you do differently for the people that are field-based?
It's sticking with obviously the coaching culture first and foremost. But I think when you're doing remote management, maybe on a telephone, you have to explain things a lot clearer than you do probably when you're in face to face, because you don't have the expressions, they can't actually see you. So I think when you're briefing somebody, you need to be far clearer and give them all the information, but then giving them time to ask the questions as well, which is obviously what good coaching's about, is giving them time to sort of go away, think about the information, and then maybe come back and explore if there's any sort of bits that are missing from the brief.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you've got your own team. Are you seeing your own team learning and developing and progressing through the coaching culture?
Yes, definitely. I'm 2 years in now, and I've got a couple of my team members that have really blossomed and are ready for their next career move. And I genuinely think that's down to having a coaching culture. It's not constantly telling them what to do. It's getting them to have that free thinking spirit and go, okay, what would you like to do? What do you want to do next? And letting them figure out what the answer is, and just being there for guidance and support. So yes, it's been great to be able to go back and put that coaching culture into my own team as well.
Lovely. Thank you. And it's so interesting listening to your experience as a manager and then your experience as a learning and development manager. So with influence over a department, a lot of people, and then going back into putting into practice being a team manager. And it's been really interesting listening to the progress that you've made in your different experiences. And also really interesting to hear how L'Oréal is a global organization. You created that culture in a department, in a division. And I think what that shows so well is that L'Oréal, I think, has always been focused on learning and development. And you created that culture in your sphere of influence. And that, I think, is a lovely message to everybody, is actually you can create that culture in the area where you had influence, and you have the ripple effect. And you talked about it influencing the external relationships with clients and customers. And that's been so interesting to hear your different experiences.
Definitely. It's challenging, as I said, but it's very rewarding as well. Just remember that you don't always get it right. Everybody can't get it right all the time. So just think about how maybe you reframe something or you try something a little bit different next time. That would be all I would say.
Lovely. So given the experience that you've had and that you shared with us, it's been so interesting. If you had a piece of advice to somebody embarking on the path of building a coaching culture, what advice or what tips would you share from your experience?
Oh, I think there's a couple, Rosie. I think make sure that you have a really clear path of who you're training, and ensure that you include those top level stakeholders quite early on in the process, as well as the vision, so that they really understand it fully. My second one would be, I always say this if I'm being honest, it's using almost the WIFM. So focus on what's in it for me, because whenever you're taking a coaching culture, if you focus on what's in it for them, then you won't go far wrong. And I think my third one would be have patience, because it's probably going to take you double the amount of time that you've anticipated, but it's also very rewarding. So please don't give up. Persevere, but have a little bit of patience, because people need this. It's a completely different way of working. It's a different culture. So allow them that time to process that and make it work for them.
Lovely. Thank you. I love that WIFM term, the what's in it for me. And if people can see what's in it for them, they're so much more likely to get on board and understand that the coaching culture benefits everybody within the organisation. Thank you so much. It's been so interesting. If people are interested in connecting with you or following you, are you happy for people to connect with you on LinkedIn? Is that probably the best way of finding you?
Yeah, definitely. Reach out to me on LinkedIn if you need any tips and tricks. I'm happy to help.
Lovely. Thank you so much. It's been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us and for the tips and the techniques and the learning that you've shared. I've really loved talking with you today. So thank you so much, Jo.
Thanks, Rosie. A pleasure.
Thank you for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. For over 20 years, our purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advance the coaching profession, and make a sustainable difference to individuals, organisations, and society. To find out more about the AC and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or visit our webpage at associationforcoaching.com. Explore our digital learning hub and enjoy our extensive library of on-demand webinars, interviews, podcasts, and a portfolio of live events featuring thought leadership, tools, models, and the latest industry trends to help you develop your coaching expertise.